writing fiction for over 20 years. Several of his short stories have appeared in anthologies, and he has written 2 novels. They are The Goat, the Sofa, and Mr. Swami, and The School of Core Incompetence. Chandrashekhar's fiction uses humor, and humor for him is an ideal vehicle to vent our feelings about the obstacles we face on a day-to-day basis. Please call him, Prithvi, Mandra, to invite him on the dais. Mr. R. Chandrashekar, please. Please. Next, Dr. Krishna Rau, or Dr. A.T.K. Rau, as he's called, is a pediatric hematologist and an oncologist by training. After his stint in the army, he has taught pediatrics and hematology. His debut novel, Yesterday's Train to Nowhere, is a compilation of 17 unique feel-good short stories. He lives in Bangalore with his doctor wife, and the couple have recently been adopted by 2 stray cats, and they dote upon them. Professor Shankar Bellur is an academician, corporate trainer, and an accomplished career mentor. He has been conducting extensive training on life skills for corporates and students. His book, At the Crossroads, How to Make the Right Choice for a Successful Career, was published in 2020 and has been featured on Book Authority as one of the all-time best book on career choices. Enjoy your evening.
Good evening, all. On the panel, we have someone from defense who has served with a lot of integrity and dedication. I would just like to get few responses from my audience. What is defense forces for you? One word synonym. Security, protection, safety, sacrifice. Yeah, ma'am? Uncertainty, fantastic. Probably sir is looking at the issue from their perspective. When we say safety or security, we are answering it from our perspective, isn't it? Yeah? Bofors. Integrity, fantastic. Orders, discipline, uniformed force, right? And probably if I talk to Dr. A.T.K. Rau or Lieutenant Colonel A.T.K. Rau, what's defense force for you? Probably his synonym would be Josh. What's defense force all about? It's all about Josh. So when we are interacting with such a accomplished resource person from defense, who has also come out with a fiction book, and the title is pretty interesting. How many of you have gone through the book? In fact, true to being an academician, I've come with my notes and the books. The title of the book is Yesterday's Train to Nowhere. Once while interacting with my students, I asked them, we are discussing financial plans, budget. I asked them, is there any individual in the world who can plan for their past? Possible? Because I believe none of us have any time machine with us where we can go back in time and rectify things. It's still in the domain of science fiction. But here is an author who has titled the book, Yesterday's Train to Nowhere. Right? Pretty interesting title. So I would like to ask you, sir, how did this title come to you?
Thank you, Dr. Bellur, and thank you to Mysore Literary Festival and Mrs. Shubha for having invited me here. Let's get on to the work. The title of the book actually is mentioned in the first chapter, where we just finished internship in one of the big army hospitals in Pune, and we were posted. Suddenly, we got the posting order that we were going to some place which was about 3,000 kilometers away in the northeast. So this entire thing is set about 35 years ago when we just started our internship. And when we went to the railway station, said that this is the place where we're going to, the MCO clerk, he said, wait, sit down. 15 minutes lagenge mere ko. And then he sat down and calculated which of the trains you have to take and how you have to go and all that. And finally we reached, he said that you'd have to go from Pune to Thane, Thane to Allahabad, Allahabad to Bongaigaon. And finally from Bongaigaon you have to go to Rangya, and from Rangya you have to go further, and then God help you. Uske baad mein dekho whatever happens. So we were prepared for it. And everybody had told us that the trains in the northeast, oh, they're notorious. Sometimes they don't come for 8 hours, sometimes they don't come for 12 hours. So finally we reached New Bongaigaon. And there in New Bongaigaon, they asked us, बैठो बैठो स्टेशन पे बैठो, जब आएगी गाड़ी तब आएगी. So ठीक है, we also sat. And it came within 2 hours. We were supposed to catch the train at 9 and it came at 11. And we were so thrilled, going to the northeast. We're going to have a great time. See that even the trains are coming on time. And then that तीसरे से ज़्यादा एक्साइट मत होना, ये कल का गाड़ी है, ये कल आना वाला था, पूरा एक दिन लेट है. So that's why it was yesterday's train. And when we reached, as we were going east into the deepening gloom, it becomes dark very early in the east of the country. So as we were going into the deepening gloom, the train suddenly stopped. So we thought it was a big station. We got down, and there was nothing. There was absolutely stillness in the night, and the fireflies and all that were going around. It was quite magical. And all other people had also got down, and people were, it's quite a nonchalant kind of gathering. People were quite used to it. And there was a small hut. Inside that hut we went, and we found that the engine driver, the train driver, having dinner with his family. He had stopped the train to have dinner. So we shocked. He said, "Aaja, aaja, baitho, tum bhi khao thoda sa." And he was very, very hospitable kind of guy. So we asked him, "Aage kidhar jayega gadi?" So I don't know the way he said it. The last train on that, the last stop on that track is Kibitu Eni, northeast. So the way he said it, it sounded like kidhar bhi nahi. And then we thought, we are on yesterday's train to nowhere. and that's how the title came.
Fantastic. Now, just to read out, some interesting aspect about, what he was referring to. As he pointed out, he was waiting for the train. I'll just read out from the book. The Tinsukia mail arrived 3 hours late on platform number 4 at 10 in the morning. Major R, that is his major who was accompanying him, had 2 reservations in his name. One done by his parent unit and other by the unit at Indore. He pulled us into his compartment and told us to shut up and let him do the talking. Please understand the context.
We didn't have reservations.
He was planning to board the train without a proper reservation. Of course, they had the warrant. They had the authority to travel in train, but not in the reservation compartment. We were close to Mughal Sarai when the scruffy and unshaven TTE arrived. In fact, I started my career as a TTE, but I was never unshaven, I believe. Major Sahab strategically placed his kit bag on the side table. Through the open side zip, we could see the unopened bottle of Old Monk rum. The TTE first looked at us quizzically and then at the bottle. The major nodded and indicated we were with him. The TTE smiled and signed our travel warrants and the reservation chart and left. The bottle now neatly nuzzled deep inside his kit bag. Not one word was exchanged, and we did not see him again in the journey. Now, why I was interested, about this particular aspect is one, of course, I started my career as a TTE, and I could relate to this particular incident, where we had a lot of my colleagues, who used to do something very similar to this, barter system. You give me what I want, I will give you what you want. And this is how most of the people, used to get reservations. But what struck me was, whenever we talk of army or defense force, we always talk about discipline. What is the image we get? The moment we say army, someone in uniform with that mustache and, we get scared looking at army major because that is the kind of attire, and the attitude they carry. But here was a major who was also street smart in helping his juniors to go along with him without reservation, and he ensured reservation for them. This for me was fantastic. And I became curious to know from Lieutenant Colonel, because the moment we talk about army, it's all about discipline, dedication, determination, training, right? Orders, you know. And now I'm very particular to know about one aspect, which probably as parents and guardians, we all would be concerned with. Today's world is full of problems. Not that there were not problems before, but today's problems require special kind of expertise to arrive at solutions. And the corporate world also requires leaders and not managers. Because India has been producing a lot of managers who just follow thumb of rule, who can work probably efficiently given a particular template. But when it comes to understanding a different scenario or a challenging scenario, taking initiative and getting things done is how we look at leadership. Now, based on his long stint in the armed forces, I would like to ask you, sir, what is leadership for you?
Wow, that's a googly. Anyway, no, it's very simple to understand leadership. Leadership is the actions which you do, which is followed by your men. It's simple as that. If the men don't follow you, you can do whatever you want. You can dance, you can sing, but that's not leadership. And the men come to know within 10 minutes who's the leader. It doesn't take them very long. And the moment you find that your leadership is working, they will follow you till the end of the earth. And they will do anything for you. I mean, I have seen instances where people have, even done anything for their commanding officers, whom they have faith in. But you don't have faith in that person, you just fall by the wayside. They will accept your orders, but they will not carry it out. That's the kind of thing. So leadership is something which you will develop over a period of time, and it's what's on the ground. You can't talk about leadership in classrooms. It's not possible. You have to show that leadership on ground, and if you come out of that leadership, you will always be a leader. Then there will be no problem about you pass the first test, you will always be a leader. But if you don't pass the first test, then it's better you look for something else. That's what, I'm sure Dr. Chandrashekar has other ideas.
Yes, certainly. Would love to know his inputs on
You're a doctor, I'm not. So, reminded of the story of a person who had graduated from a business school, gone on to careers, and 10, 15 years later, he goes back to his business school and meets his old professor and asks his professor, what are you teaching your student these days? So the professor opens his drawer and pulls out a piece of paper and says, this is the final exam I'm giving the students this semester. So this ex-student looks at it and says, this is the same exam you gave us 15 years back. So he says, yes, but the answers have all changed. So ultimately, I don't think leadership is something that can be taught in a business school. It's something which people have to learn from experience. And people like Dr. Rau, they've sort of really gone through the school of hard knocks, have learned a lot. So ultimately, I think leadership is something which you really need to be out there, face challenges, be defeated sometimes, and then what you learn from that, some little bit of it, maybe you can call leadership.
That was truly insightful because, generally we associate leadership only with success. And especially in the B schools, we have a tendency, since Professor R. Chandrashekar, being a hardcore finance expert, has also taught in a couple of B schools. Financial management is his favorite domain. Now, just to sum it up, this particular discussion on leadership, I would just like to quote from the epilogue of this book, Yesterday's Train to Nowhere. It's written like this: every branch of the Indian Army offers its own quota of adventure, chills and thrills, and the inevitable ups and downs that makes life so interesting for an youngster who has just donned the uniform. I generally have this thought, I keep thinking about this. is life something which can be planned? Because we always say planning is inevitable for our future. But in most of the times, especially when we look back and see at our own lives, we see most of the things just happened. And it all boils down to a couple of strong traits in us. One is the resilience, other is the perseverance. Now, my question to Dr. Rao is, from the context of the most challenging workplace, that is the defense, how important is for a uniformed soldier to display resilience and perseverance in order to do justice to their responsibility?
It's like this, that when you join the armed forces, all of you are in one particular battalion or regiment or something like that, where you all face the same hardships. That includes everybody in that department. Everybody in that regiment will face the same problems. So that forms a terrific bonding. Everybody will, it's been told that you would have to go in such and such place and go on such and such long range patrol. Yes, but we all go together. And you know that somebody has got your back all the time. And that gives you so much of strength and courage to go ahead to places where you probably would never go if you were not wearing the uniform. It allows you to do that. And when you reach that certain stage where the men are looking up to you for leadership and you're leading them on, and you have their collective strength behind you, it becomes easy to achieve things which normally, when I think back of my service days when we were in high altitude and all that, it was fabulous in the sense that I don't ever think I will be able to do it again after coming out from the armed forces. And the things which we did was very, very awe-inspiring, which to me now is also awe-inspiring. So the leadership is what you demonstrate to the troops, and they follow behind. And both of you give strength to each other. And that is where the resilience comes in. That is where the resilience comes in. Life is not easy. It's not easy. There are times when you face insurmountable obstacles. But then the idea is not to go back.
Exactly.
The idea is to carry on forward and do what best you can under the circumstances. Sooner or later, things will work out. I just want to tell the younger members of the audience here that there's no shortcut, to life. Life is full of ups and downs. You'll have equal number of ups and equal number of downs. Just take it how it comes. Put in a lot of humor into it. You'll get over it without a problem. You'll get over it. But basic thing is you need a lot of humor in that.
Yeah, because generally, when we start teaching a new subject for these B school students, the first thing they would like to ask us as faculties is, sir, does this topic has a lot of problems in it, or is it just theory oriented? And I ask them why, because they say how easy it is for us to pass the exam. Because this generation, most of them, though I don't want to generalize, they just want to hack everything. That old school of thought, going through the grind, they believe in working smart. But probably we as a generation, we believe that, first you need to put the foundation, do the hard work, and then over which, you can do the smart work, preparation. With preparation without efforts is not going to yield the results. Maybe that is what, I was able to summarize based on what Dr. Rao said.
And there's just one more thing I'd like to mention, that the Josh which is there in the commander is sitting here from the Navy, so I'm not going to talk about the Navy, but I'm going to talk about the Army. The Josh which is there in the Army, that makes so many things so easy. We had a situation once where we had to evacuate a patient by helicopter. The patient was not well, and that patient was not authorized evacuation by helicopter because it was one of the families of the serving people. So we were wondering what to do because the ambulance journey is long. It takes about 5 hours, 6 hours. So when we rang up Air Force, they said it's only for uniformed personnel. So fine. We caught hold of one soldier and told him, "Oi, tere pet mein dard hai." "Nahi saab, mere pet mein koi dard nahi hai." "Nahi, tere pet mein dard hai." "Haan, jaa saab, pet mein dard." "Let jao niche." Put him on the stretcher, put him on that, and that helicopter had two berths, you see. So in one we put the genuine patient, the other we put Gurnam Singh and told him, chal. So he got a free ride to the base hospital. He was happy. He came back by ambulance, and we managed. So this is the kind of Josh which I'm talking about. Never think about it in, how to get over the rules and regulations.
Since Dr. Rao is talking about the Josh, right? We have a small video, probably, just couple of minutes, which,
Very much like you to see this
yeah,
video
because on his request, we are playing that video, because that is something in essence, we'll talk a lot about the defense force and how exactly, they work for one another and collectively take care of the nation's security.
धरती तन होए अंबर सब्बे दुख मुके सच्चे पातशाह जी हथ बन दे मत्था टेक दे तुसी आन टुके सच्चे पातशाह जी हेठा चानन दा दरिया.
It's the Guru Granth Sahib, the holy books of Sikh, which is being carried.
It is the Guru Granth Sahib which is being taken from Leh airport to the unit operational area. They're giving it a guard of honor. So this is the guard of honor. And they carry the holy book on the head. Just note, just see carefully the person who's got the book on his head. I want you to just see that person. I just wanted to see this person. He's carrying the book on his head.
दरबार सच्चा बाकी सब परम भुलेखाए तेरा शब्द सुना वैराग होवे तन मन दे बदलन वेग बाबा
This is in Leh airfield. And did you see the person carrying the? Well, here it comes. That was a Bengali officer who's wearing a turban and he's carrying the Guru Granth Sahib. So, ladies, gentlemen, that is the Indian Army, that is the leadership.
Probably that's what Indianness is all about, Bhartiyata or secularism, whatever you want to call it. That's the true spirit of India. And I think we all need to be very proud that our army is the flag bearer of this true spirit. Now coming back to our discussion, the second book, again the title is very, very interesting. I would like to call Professor Chandrashekar, with due permission from all of you, the Mysore Prince of Satire. He has used satire in such an effective way. Once you go through the book, you will understand. He has discussed a deep-rooted issue as far as Indian polity is considered. We have been talking in a hush-hush manner or probably in close circle about some of the biggest blunders our political leaders have committed. And in this book, the protagonist is a Prime Minister, 80+ guy, who is very full of life. He has got his own habits, lifestyles, but everything has been dealt with satire. And the title of this book is The Goat, the Sofa and Mr. Swami. Now that could be a pretty interesting challenge for us to see the link between the goat, the sofa and Mr. Swami. Who better than the author himself to speak about his title?
Okay, so this book is, some of you who were around 40 years back would remember that the Pakistani dictator Ziaul Haq, sometime in the mid-80s, he invited himself over to attend a test match in India. This is when India and Pakistan's relations were not particularly good. So this was a test match. I think it was in Jaipur, the city where they also have a literary festival, which you might have heard of. But he basically called up Rajiv Gandhi and said, I'm coming for this match. So many years later, I was sort of thinking about what to write, and this episode came to mind. So I said, what if this happens now? That you have an Indian Prime Minister, you have a Pakistani Prime Minister who calls up the Indian Prime Minister one fine day without warning and says, look, you're going to have an indoor park test match and I'd like to come and visit. So that's the sort of the setting. And what happens is that the person who's in charge of ensuring that nothing goes wrong is a person called Mr. Swami, who is the personal assistant to the Indian Prime Minister. And Mr. Swami has his agenda, the Prime Minister has his agenda, there are a lot of other people who have their agendas. And in a sense, everything that can go wrong does go wrong. So in the middle of all of this, let me just sort of read out a passage and why the goat, and then I'll tell you about the sofa. If I can just read out a little bit. So the old man is the Prime Minister, and the I is Mr. Swami. This is the Prime Minister's personal assistant, who's also an IAS officer. We, the old man and I, were watching television. Shah is the Pakistani Prime Minister, had called up earlier to tell us that he would be holding a press conference and that he had a very pleasant surprise in store for us. I was suspicious. Shah had this very nasty habit of throwing curveballs at his press conferences. As a matter of abundant precaution, I had our publicity chaps on full alert. The old man was more sanguine. He had seen it all, and little could shake him from his sense of well-being. Besides, he had a bolt hole in the form of the hospital and a personal secretary who had grown adept at facing the music. The stage was Islamic green, a green backdrop, a green carpet, a table covered with a green tablecloth, green upholstered chairs. It all looked like a scene from The Wizard of Oz. A cluster of microphones sat on the table awaiting the great man, and a bunch of journalists sat around the room doing the same. There was a bustle, and Shah strode onto the stage. He cleared his throat, looked around, acknowledging a favored journalist or two before reading from a prepared text. Gentlemen and ladies, my fellow Pakistanis, we are now only days away from an event of considerable historical significance. Relations between India and Pakistan have been adversarial for far too long, and I hope to bring about a qualitative change with my visit to New Delhi. I am happy that the government of India has gone out of its way to arrange an interesting program. I take this as a sign that the Indians too want a change in the way we have dealt with each other. Inshallah, our citizens can look forward to years of prosperity rather than war or acrimony. Now, on behalf of all Pakistanis, I would like to make a very special gesture to all Indians. When I go to India, I will be taking with me, and here he paused and gestured. The cameras duly swiveled around and focused on a goat. Shah continued, I will be taking with me this mountain goat from the Baltistan area of Pakistan to present to Prime Minister Motwani. We have named him Sikandar. This is a rare and prized specimen, and its rarity symbolizes a desire for peace and friendship with India. The rare and prized specimen had that vacant look so characteristic of goats. Sikandar clearly did not relish the limelight. Twice he tried to break away, once coming close to goring Shah's ass before being wrestled away. Overcome by the trauma, he crapped all over the green carpet. The fact of the matter was this: Sikandar was a goat, and in the name of friendship and so forth, the Pakistanis were dumping him on us. The sofa, well, if you read the book, you will find that the Prime Minister Motwani is at the head of a very unwieldy coalition government with 175 ministers. And once the match is announced and the Pakistani Prime Minister wants to come, all 175 ministers want to sit on the sofa next to Pakistan Prime Minister Shah. How do you go about doing that? That's the story of the sofa.
I think that's fantastic, right? He has demystified the title, The Goat, the Sofa, and Mr. Swami. In one of his initial chapters, the situation context is something like this. As he pointed out, the Prime Minister of Pakistan has self-invited himself to attend a cricket match in India. There was no official invitation from the Indian side. And when the press in India got excited, because if you look at then, because India-Pakistan was something akin to Cold War between US and USSR, that was the intensity and emotions, right, involved in Indo-Pak relationships. When Indian press wanted clarification, obviously they went to the IFS officer who was serving as a secretary at the Ministry of External Affairs. And when he was contacted, he made it very clear, from our end, there has been no invitation to Prime Minister of Pakistan. Once the Pakistan Prime Minister came to know about this clarification from the Indian ambassador or Indian IFS officer, he calls up our Indian Prime Minister on a hotline. But Indian Prime Minister was very busy with his own priorities, so he couldn't answer the call back. Then after that, the Indian Prime Minister does call him, and this is how the conversation goes. Are Shah Sahib, Salam Alaikum. I was told that you called last night, but I was fast asleep, not to be disturbed, the doctor said. I am now 82 years old, you see. The Pakistani PM's voice was utterly lacking in bonhomie and good cheer. Cold, in a word. Mr. Prime Minister, I have been embarrassed and humiliated. I have had to face my citizens and explain myself. I am upset. My country has been insulted. There is nothing more to talk about. Arey, don't be upset. You will be my guest here. I will take care of Kapoor. Kapoor is that IFS officer who gave the clarification that there has been no invite from our end. Ullu Kapatta. I am transferring him to Jumri Talaya. Is it some fictional place? Jumri Talaya?
Jumri Talaya is a very real place.
Real place.
All of you who have listened to Vivid Bharati in the good old days would know that the maximum number of requests
Used to come from that place?
It's in Bihar.
Bihar. Oh, fantastic. Okay. And then this is what the Pakistan Prime Minister says. You cannot transfer him to Jumri Talaya because he is from IFS. How do you know all this? This guy is shocked. I have got my own sources. Anyway, you can transfer him to Mogadishu. Then this guy will ask, where is that? It's a country in Africa, people shooting each other all the time. Now, if you just listen to this conversation between our premier and Pakistan premier, look at what he's saying. Look at the tone. There is total submission from our end. And when Pakistan premier says, I have my own sources in your place, it means we have given easy access to a country. And this gentleman doesn't bother to question him on that or rectify the situation. There was a time, probably in 70s and 80s, the legacy of what we study in history was our political leaders, our political leadership collectively, we catered more to international community's acceptance rather than taking care of our own national interests. Now my question to Professor Chandrashekar is, has there been any change as of now? Is India finding its foothold in the world of nations? The so-called Vishwaguru, which India wants to be, are we moving in that direction? Are we in a position to be the flag bearer, show direction to this world, and make this world a much better place to live in? Has there been any change in this particular aspect?
I think we are certainly better off than we used to be, but then we are not where we think we ought to be or where we think we are. So, ultimately, in all these matters, respect comes from power, economic power. Okay. So until we get to the point where we can push our weight around, unfortunately, that's the world we live in. Uh, to some extent or the other, we are living in a world of illusions as to where we are. We are better than we were, but there's a long way to go yet.
Just to borrow from accounting parlance, it's still a work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
Not a finished product. So we still have some time. But we should be happy at least we are moving in the right direction. There's one more interesting book from Mr. Chandrashekar. Fantastic book. Since I also have an experience of more than a decade of teaching in B schools in Mysore and Bangalore, I really loved this book. And anyone who is connected to academics or want to have a fair understanding of what exactly is happening in the so-called glamorous B schools, right? And look at the title, he calls it The School of Core Incompetence. Again, it's a fictionalized account. Maybe, he has some sort of an inspiration based on his own experience. But again, he has used satire to put across the rut, what is happening in most of the B schools. If you just look at the front page, the cover, Top Management Institute, I think most of these terms, phrases you probably can recollect. 100% fully air conditioned, 100% bank loan, all toppers, 100% placement, free laptop, free foreign tour, top class canteen, state of the art facilities, captivating Coimbatore campus, because that is where this story is based on. Affiliated to the world's best university, apply now, blah, 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 right? You take the brochure of any B school worth its salt, you will find all of these or most of these on it. But how many of us, as an important stakeholder of education, do we actually validate this with the people who have put this or positioning their college that they offer all of this? Based on my experience teaching in B schools, I always used to find this generation kids, they wanted to hack the system or hack the results or the outcome. So the best thing for them was to pick up a specialization, which they had to after they completed the first 2 semesters, to either take marketing or HR, because both were theory papers, very easy to clear the exams. Once they completed the exams and hit the job market, they didn't wanted a marketing job. And HR jobs were not available in the market. This being the scenario, so based on your experience, do you think the present B schools, what is the kind of value addition they are doing to the students? Before he answers this, I want to share just for a minute a small anecdote. I was working for a software industry in Bangalore. In one of the campus placement interviews, I was part of the panel along with my HR and the business head. This boy who came in nice attire from a very reputed B school of Bangalore, he had specialized in finance. And to open up the interview, after the HR had the initial conversation, I asked the boy, according to you, what is finance? He just gave me a look. Hello, I am from so-and-so B school, and you are asking me what is finance? I said, that is what you are specialized, right? So I am interested. I told him, what is finance according to you? He probably took 30 to 40 seconds and then told me, it's money. Now I want to tell him, honey, please get lost. After having studied MBA professional course for 2 years, having specialized in financial management, if you still feel finance is money, the same answer I can get from any Tom, Dick and Harry on the street. My thought process, what is 2 years of your MBA, what value addition has happened to you? Sir, your thoughts.
No, so the thing is, I think this book was inspired I think there are something like 3,000 institutes in India offering something which approximates an MBA or a PGDM or whatever you want to call it. I think probably about 100 of them are fairly decent. You know, they have legitimate faculty. There's probably some sort of a selection process for students. Once you get past that, you are in this strange world of, I mean, first of all, the institutes exist only to sort of extract money from students. And in terms of what you learn or job placements and all of that, I mean, it's really a sad story, really. I mean, this is supposed to be a funny book, but it's a funny book about a sad situation. And so, I mean, a lot of these students are essentially being taken for a ride by being sold false dreams, false expectations. You learn nothing in the classroom. And at the end of the day, you know, let's say you have a student who studies marketing. Now, most marketing students who have graduated with marketing, you have to go out there and meet your customers. It could be, you know, in the hot sun in the middle of India. You have to go through the rainy monsoons to meet, you know, dealers and so on. It's hard work. What these people want is an air-conditioned office, a job in an air-conditioned office. So there's this big disconnect between what they want, what the school is promising, what they are taught, and so on. So, I mean, the book is basically pokes a lot of fun at what's going on, but the underlying issue is very, very serious. There is a real problem, and we've got it all wrong. And I think in addition to us getting it wrong, I think the government also gets it all wrong. So we have a regulator which regulates business schools, and they're sort of more interested in trivia. They want to know whether the appropriate number of bathrooms for each student, whether each classroom has the correct number of fans, whether the entry driveway is of a particular size. They don't want to hear anything about what's taught in the classrooms.
Exactly.
So, and I think a lot of this book is about that.
Yeah, that more or less, you know, sums up the present scenario of most of the B schools, you know, what we find in India. Probably as important stakeholders of education and the future generation, I think, you know, probably we all need to collectively make the institution, the system accountable. Because somewhere I think, you know, we are not doing it, and therefore,
I have a suggestion.
yeah.
All these B school guys should be given 2 years in the army. They will be fine.
None of them will join the business schools.
They will be fine after that.
Obviously. No, just to add to him, recently we had a scheme announced by central government, Agnipath, right? A short-term stint in, right? What do you think about that, sir?
Well, we have a short service commission for officers. So this is like a short service commission for soldiers. The only problem is that it's 4 years. Maybe it could have been a little longer.
Little longer.
Yeah, so that you give them 1.5 years of training, and now with 1.5 years of training, they're given 2.5 years of service. That can be increased. It's cost effective in the sense that you train them for a year, 6 months training, and by the time the leave gets over, it'll be 1.5 years.
Yeah.
And then keep them for about 5.5 years. And that was going on till I think 1971, where it was made into 15 years service. Otherwise, most of our soldiers, 7 years,
So,
young,
yeah.
good soldiers. I don't think that's a problem at all as far as that is concerned. There are many other issues in this regard, but I don't want to get into that. But this seems to be a okay way of getting. I also wish and hope that the normal method of enrollment of soldiers permanent into the army, that would continue for some time till these boys make up the deficit. But overall, I don't see there's anything wrong with having this kind of a thing. Yeah. And I'm total votary of the fact all youngsters should be given 2 years of military service.
That's fantastic.
Once they do that, we're not going to have half the problems of what we discussed today about all people having psychological problems, and people doing this and doing
the
that.
social issues,
Everything
behavioral
goes
issues,
up because once you're at 15,000 feet, your brain starts working properly. You just need to go to 15,000 feet.
That's it. Yeah. I would like to know if there are any questions from the audience. So we have two very accomplished panelists. Yeah, yes, sir. Can someone?
I'm Dr. Moti, a pediatrician from Mysore. Okay, this is to Dr. Rao. After having had a stint in the army, now you have changed over to the field of hematology and childhood cancer, championing the cause of childhood cancer. How does this shift give? What kind of an impact you feel? And what positives you derive from your army experience, which you can put into your medical practice? And of course, you have mentored so many pediatricians, including my son, whom I regard as a disciplined
Fantastic,
pediatrician because he worked under you. Okay? So that's one thing I thought I should take.
Thank you, sir. Everything what I've done after I left the army is because of what I learned in the army. Let's be very clear about it. And the way you behave, the way you talk, the way you look after patients, everything is what we learned in the army. So that way I'm absolutely grateful. After I came out of the army, I've learned a lot of the science of medicine, but the art of medicine I learned when I was in the army. So always grateful to that experience which we had. And it's made you very disciplined. It's made you a kind of patient first kind of approach, which in the armed forces, it's always like that, patient first, and then everything else. So that's something which you take away, and that will remain with us for the rest of our
Forever,
lives.
yeah. It's fantastic. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Thank you for asking me this question. Thank you for asking me this question. There were two reasons, or maybe three. First is I wanted to write down all these experiences which I've written in the book are all what we underwent. I've just fictionalized it a little bit because I didn't want to put in the real names and the, the formation signs and all that, because the army is still functional in those areas. So that's one reason. The reason is these are all stories which I had told 100,000 times to everybody who ever met me. And everybody would say, oh no, not again, yeah, we heard about this. So I wanted to put it down on paper before senile dementia got me. So that's number one. The second thing is during the pandemic, I lost some of my colleagues who were my friends. They were doctors, and a lot of them died, 2-3 of them. And then it was glum. It was despondency. I think everybody has experienced that. Everybody has lost some odd family member. So I just wanted to put this down because these are all feel-good stories. And if you read this, you'll realize that life's not that bad. It was pretty bad at that time, but it's not so bad. And there are still ways you can get over it. So these are the two reasons which I wrote. Yes, ma'am, please.
On your behalf, I'd like to pose the same question to Mr. Chandrashekar also, because he's a hardcore finance guy. Someone where only rationality, numbers, and logic, what he has dealt with. Now from there, he has come to fiction and satire as a form. How did that shift happen?
I've been wanting to write for a very long time. So this is kind of more like an itch, something you've been wanting to do. And so when that itch is there, you can either keep thinking about wanting to write or get down to writing. I mean, the best way to sort of deal with this itch is to actually start writing. And so I started with short stories first. That went on for a few years. And then I said, okay, maybe I should try the longer form and see how it goes. It took a long time, but in the end, I was able to get a couple of books out. And so it's more to sort of satisfy some internal something, something which I wanted to do, and finally, luckily enough, was able to do it.
And if you're stressed when writing, then don't write. You should be able to write it without any stress. That is it just naturally flows and you keep writing it down, putting it on. But if it stresses you, then don't write, because that's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Many writers are, how shall you put it, not quite right upstairs. So I don't know about that.
Sir, even though the stories are funny and they're real as well, moral perfection in stories seems fine. But does moral perfection actually exist in real world, or a concept like that actually is possible? I'm just curious about it.
Well, you can try. You can try to be as moral as possible till the limit of your patience and till the limit of what you've been taught. I can't judge for anybody else. I can judge for myself. And I'm sure everybody would have the same idea that you go to the limits of, I mean, there's somebody who said every man has his price. You know, it's just some are less, some is more. And it's up to you to decide what is moral for you and what is not moral for you. I mean, it's individually, nobody can give you a benchmark for that.
Yeah, hi. I, for one, who's had around 2.5 decades of experience in corporates, Shankar Bellur, sir, and Dr. Krishna Rau. This question goes out to you. So I would like to speak in favor of B schools and our education system, very honestly, because I've hired from the IIMs and the XLRIs and the Pune Symbiosis Institutes. And I know these kids, and if you all have seen Three Idiots, I'm sure all of us have seen Three Idiots. I mean, what they teach, yes, there is the good and the bad to it, but the good comes in terms of life lessons. And these guys really come with hard and sound understanding of life lessons. And as far as our education system is concerned, I think, there was a point we never heard of liberal arts in India. But today, if you contact Ashoka University, you contact, and you have students going to NMIMS, Narsimonji Institute, there's so many opportunities. So I think we have kind of done well for ourselves, and B school kids are not that bad. So yeah, and I'm just speaking from my perspective.
Thanks for that perspective. Just to intervene, B school kids are bad. I believe no one believes in that. We don't want to generalize, but we are trying to look at the system, from where the rot is, coming up.
Oh.
Unfortunately, the B schools, what she's pointing out, all the branded ones or highly ranked ones, have one criteria where they look at work experience of the candidate before they say yes for admission. But most of the other B schools, as I was pointing out, are basically into making numbers. And unfortunately, they all are autonomous. So whoever walks in will walk out with a degree, irrespective of whether there has been any value addition in those 2 years. Most of the B schools. But of course, we have exceptions, and like in every system, we'll always have exceptions. We cannot generally, I definitely agree with you. We have some good B schools, and some great products are coming out, but only thing is we are talking of the ecosystem, the system what we have built, to nurture this.
I'm going to share a secret with you. My son is from IMA, and he was in B school, and I wanted him to be a doctor, but he said, I'd rather go somewhere else. Anyway, that's a different story. They make fantastic managers. There's absolutely no doubt. They make the best managers. But as far as leadership is concerned, they would probably have to grow into that role over a period of time. There's absolutely no doubt that they make fantastic managers. I would like him to manage my my work, but leadership is get onto the ground and. Absolutely, there is no doubt about it. The managers would become leaders if they took that one extra step from managing to leading, if they take just for that one extra step. And that is given whether you like it or not in the army, it's thrust down your throat. You have to lead because if you're an officer and you're a senior person in that team, it just comes on to you, everybody looks up to you. Ab kya karna hai saab? Then that's the time when the sweat breaks out because you don't know ab kya karna hai saab, So that's the thing. You're thrust into leadership roles very, very early in the army. But it takes some time for these. But as you said, the stakes are probably much higher in the corporate world. So it's better they go gain a little experience and then become leaders, Yes, there's one. Yes, ma'am.
What a wonderful and interesting discussion that was. We'll take it outside because we're time up. Yeah. That was truly a lovely discussion. Thank you so much. It was very humorous and engaging, and particularly like the statement about the B school